Hey, it's Thomas here, and on the last episode of our high-tech planted build, we talked about the tank, and also what a high-tech tank is, in essence, in my opinion. Today we're going to be talking about filtration, and what filter I should be sticking on this tank, along with heating and some other stuff. So let's start with a filter. I'm sure you remember on the low-tech series, I was looking at two filters. Basically, I was looking at the most basic of filters, a hang-on power filter, and or also a canister filter. I think for high-tech planted tanks, the popular choice is to use a canister filter. And not only because it's going to help push off the amount of maintenance you're going to have to do on the filter itself, but also because it is minimalist in design. Because the filter doesn't have to sit up near the tank, it can be on the floor, either under the stand or beside the stand. It has a visual aspect that's really appealing. You only have two small thin tubes that are coming up to the side of the tank, and you've got relatively thin intake and output hardware in the aquarium itself. So ultimately, I decided I gotta go with a canister. It makes the most sense. It fits the visual function of the aquarium, not only the filtration function, and I wouldn't mind having a place to put some other gadgets. So naturally, I'm gravitating straight to my favorite brand of canister filter, and that is Eheim. I'm gonna be putting a Classic Series 2213 canister on this tank. It should be plenty of filter for this 17-gallon aquarium, especially considering the fact that the plants are also going to be doing a lot of the waste removal in terms of extra nutrients in the system. The other reason I really wanted to use the 2213 isn't just because I want to push off maintenance, but because it is a nice, slick little filter. It's got thin tubing. It's really going to marry up well with the look I'm going for, which is minimalistic. And it also affords me the ability to put an inline heater on the aquarium, which brings me to the Hydor 200-watt inline heater that I'm going to be throwing on here. It's a great little heater. I know 200 watts is a lot more than what you actually need for 17 gallons of water, but it is the smallest model that they make. And the only thing that changes really is the fact that the water's going to come to temperature faster because of that higher wattage. It's not really going to harm the heater or harm the tank because that heater has a thermostat to control the actual temperature, so it will shut the heater on and off as necessary. Another thing I really like about inline heaters, not only that they're not in the aquarium, is that because you're constantly moving the water past the heater, the entire volume of water has to come up to temperature at the same time. So you kind of avoid having that problem where you've got one end of the aquarium where the heater is being slightly warmer than the opposite end of the aquarium because that heater is turning on and off based on the water that's immediately around it. In order to kind of get away from that, you'd have to do what we did on the low-tech tank, which is have the filter intake or output right beside the heater to try and move the water around the heater to the opposite end of the tank. Inline heater, you don't worry about that at all. It has to happen that way, so it's just kind of awesome. Since I wanted to go all out on the look of this system, not only the equipment, I'm also going to be using some Aqua Vitro stainless steel hardware to replace the stock intake and output on the Eheim canister filter. The reason I went with that rather than another popular option, which is glass lily pipes, is because I've got a lot of stainless steel stuff around the tank. The stand itself that I'm using has great components, which are very similar to stainless steel, and I thought it would be a really neat way to tie it all together rather than glass lily pipes, which as much as I think they look awesome, if they get algae on the inside, it can be a little bit more difficult to remove. It's another maintenance thing you have to take care of that I want to avoid, and also they're glass, so if you accidentally bump into them, you can break them. And I don't want to break anything. Stainless steel, on the other hand, good luck me breaking that stuff. So now, let's get all that stuff put together and thrown on this tank and get it one step closer to being water ready, aquarium ready, fish ready, plant ready, all of the ready. I'm ready. So first up, I'm going to get the stainless steel hardware on the tank. I've got it in 13 millimeter, which will match up swimmingly with my 2213 canister. The reason I want to get this on there first is so that when I'm ready to cut the tubing for the canister, I know exactly how far that tubing needs to go up the back of the tank. I may or may not use the intake screen that I've got here. That really depends on whether or not I decide to keep little shrimp in the system. I don't know what I'm keeping for livestock, so I thought it would be good to have on hand. So let's get them on there. The other thing I really like about these is the suction cups are actually on the outside of the tank rather than the inside, so it's, again, one less thing to have in the aquarium. I'm gonna have the intake closer to the back of the tank, and I'm gonna put the return in front of it since the return is even less obtrusive than the intake. So it kind of fades into the background a little bit. There we go. Next up, we're gonna get the Eheim 2213 Classic Canister on the aquarium. I'm not gonna go too crazy in depth with how to set this thing up because we actually already have a video on how to set up a Classic Series canister. So if you wanna have a blast from the past, because it was one of the very first videos we made, go check that out and you can see how much I haven't changed at all. All right. So I'm not gonna be using that hardware since I've upgraded. Got some tubing there. All right, Mr. Canister. Okay. All the media is already packed inside of the canister. And the 2213 I actually really like because it has a basket inside of it, which kind of helps just in keeping the media all compact and together. I'm not going to be using the carbon pad because I don't like using carbon unless I absolutely have to, especially when I'm going to be adding fertilizers and stuff to this tank. So unless I run into a situation where I need to get rid of something using carbon, I'm just not going to use it. So now that it's out, I will get this all back together. It can go back in the canister. I'm also just going to make sure that the bottom stem here is twisted in all the way. Sometimes in shipping they kind of untwist themselves a bit, but it feels really snug, which is perfect. So we can get the head back on this unit. That's perfect. Okay. So I'm going to actually have it sitting just beside the stand since this stand won't accommodate having a canister filter underneath, but I don't mind that. It kind of makes the lines to the actual aquarium pretty direct, and when I do need to do maintenance on the canister, it's right out in the open. I don't have any doors to get in the way or have to crawl in any spaces to go get it. I'm going to put my quick disconnects on first. I like to have roughly about 2 inches of tubing just at the bottom coming off the canister. So I'm going to start by just cutting a couple of pieces of tubing about 2 inches long. Now from this stage, I'm actually going to next stick on the high door inline heater. It's going to be on the output of the canister. The reason you want to put your inline heater on the output of the canister rather than the intake is so that clean filtered water is going through the heater. That way you're reducing the amount of buildup you could get on the inside of the heater and therefore the amount of maintenance you'd actually have to do on the heater. I have had inline heaters set up for a year or more without having to do maintenance on them just by always making sure they're on the output of the canister so you don't get crud going through it from the tank. You'll see on the heater there's actually an arrow telling you what direction the water needs to travel in. They also provide a loop on this heater so that if you need to, you can suspend it so the weight of the heater, although it is extremely light, isn't putting any pressure on the tubing. So I may or may not need to use that. I have a feeling this is just going to rest up against the stand anyways, but we will see what happens. Just rest that over here for a moment. And next, we need to just kind of do a rough measurement of how much tubing we're going to need here. So let's just cut a piece, get it on this intake of the canister. We're going to maybe about here. So I know this is curving away from the tank, but there is a little bit of a lip where the tubing needs to kind of go over the edge and then up to the actual hardware. So I'm using that curve that's naturally in the tubing to my advantage to go around that bend without kinking. Let's just make sure I did an all right job. Oh, look, I came up short. I came up short. Hopefully I have enough tubing to make up for my mistake. Let's try that again, this time with a little bit more precision on my end. As per the usual, I don't want the tubing to be super taut. I want it to have a little bit of slack so that we're not putting any pressure on the connections of the filter. That should do just fine. Gotta love that sound of metal on glass. Excellent. It is officially set up. I'm also going to be adding a thermometer to the tank. I say it a lot that even when you have a heater with a thermostat, it's very important to also have a thermometer so that you know the exact temperature the aquarium's actually reaching, that the heater's doing its job in the way it should, that it's not overheating the tank or underheating the tank, and ultimately that the heater's working. So I'm going to be opening this Tom thermometer up and getting it on the tank. The reason I actually picked the Tom thermometer is because the display itself goes in one spot, and all you have is a small probe that goes into the aquarium, so I should be able to hide this quite easily and keeping everything looking super slick and looking gorgeous. So let's get this one on there. They give you some double-sided Velcro with adhesive so that you can mount your beautiful little Tom display wherever you'd like. I'm probably going to stick it on the stand, facing maybe on this side of the stand so we don't actually have to see it. And I'll check it periodically. The other thing about the Tom Aquarium Temp Alert is I can actually set a high and low temperature on it, and it will beep if I ever exceed either the low or the high setting. That way, you know, if it gets really cold in here and the heater's not working, I get a little alarm to tell me. And if it gets really hot in here and the heater's shut off, but the tank's exceeding what I would say is an acceptable temperature for that setup, it's going to tell me as well, which is an awesome feature to have. I'm going the wrong direction with the twisty tie. Brilliant. Well, I'm getting so jazzed up to get this tank full of water and plants and stuff. We're one step closer, and I gotta say, I think this is gonna be probably one of the slickest looking planted tanks I've done. I've done a few high-tech plant tanks in the past, but this one's gonna take the cake. Next up, we're talking lighting. There are so many options for lights. It's kind of just absolutely nuts how many options are out there. Now, I think you're gonna be pretty surprised with the light I actually ended up picking for this tank. It kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting to love the light that I ended up grabbing, but turns out I really like it, and I'm really excited to show you guys what I've got in store in terms of lighting and talk lighting for high-tech tanks. So tune into the next episode and, you know, subscribe so that you can tune into the next episode. And don't forget, you can drop comments down in the comment section below if there's anything you'd like to ask us. We're happy to get back to you. I honestly love chatting with you guys down there. You can also reach out to us on social media like Facebook and check out our Instagram. We have all kinds of cool aquatic eye candy for you there. And as always, you gotta keep on tanking with some plants, high-tech tanking. And yes, stainless steel is nice. I'm a big fan. Never had stainless steel stuff before. Turns out I love it. I write down what I'm going to say first. I want to make sure I stay on track and, you know, hit all the points I had in my brain. Sometimes I forget things, and I don't want to forget things. I want to give you guys everything. But now Brian's making me self-conscious.